Hello, Garland Nixon. This is our weekly limited or unlimited, I don't know, hangout with the one and only Matt Weinglass. So let's see what he's got to say this week. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon with Matt Weinglass. Matt, tell everyone where they can find you and all of your good works.
Oh, on the Homeless Left on Rumble. That's our main channel. You guys can check us out there. We're trying to do a burner channel on YouTube since they took down our last one. They literally terminated us on YouTube. So we started a new one. It's called THL Presents. You can catch us Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. So yeah, we're going strong. Rumble, at least Rumble doesn't pull the plug on us. They let us talk. So
Yeah, I did a show for those who are watching. I did a show last night with Caleb Maupin, which was a lot of fun. But I learned something. It was like 9:30. That's too late for me. I was so tired. Caleb, he's like loaded with injury. He's like, yeah, let me tell you, he's giving us history, and I'm like, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. I'm like, oh my God, my brain was mush. So perhaps I should do it a bit earlier. Anyway, let's start here. We got plenty of news to talk about, but I want to start here. So there's a big to do now on Capitol Hill, right? And all the news. Apparently, some insiders from the White House were planning, their usual diabolical murder in Yemen, and they used Signal, an app that I have on my phone, but I don't use because I don't trust it. I'll put it like this. If I use it, it's just like, I just figure like I'm calling on my phone, MI6, they're all listening in. That's my assumption. So I don't like, oh boy, I've got an encrypted app. I don't even really trust or believe that stuff. So what we're supposed to believe was that the White House used Signal, because they knew nobody could ever get into that. And then they were going to, and afterwards, so there's so many elements to this, but that you could talk about whether or not it was real or total psyop. The other part of it is this, before we even get to that. So what's the media upset about? They bombed and killed 50 civilians that night. Not a problem. That's what you do if you're an empire. But they talked about it on an unencrypted app. My God, somebody now you don't get fired for mercilessly slaughtering civilians, men, women, and children, with no remorse, for violating the Constitution. They've literally started a war with Yemen with no constitutional authority. Not a problem. But God forbid you should use the wrong app when you talk about it. Heads must roll. Your thoughts about all this madness, Matt Weinglass?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. This is the playbook. They do this every time. It's protecting the military industrial complex, and they tell the viewers. So like if you're watching CNN or MSNBC in the last 24 hours, they're instructing you what to be angry about. So they're manufacturing that anger as they manufacture fear and they manufacture consent. That's how it works. That's the strategy. That's the blueprint. So in this case with Pete Hegseth, and like you said, this could have been an entire psyop from the beginning. But the fact that you have this quote unquote leak going out in the Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg putting this out, the timing of it, even if we take it for face value, that it was an accident, and Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of the Atlantic, has this information, decides to put it out after we strike Yemen. So not even any regard for timing on, you could have actually saved us from this kind of strike, these kind of strikes that we've been doing. We don't go through Congress anymore. We don't approve these type of things. We just go and we bomb the crap out of the Middle East, wherever we are at the time, multiple places as we know right now, but particularly in Yemen. So this gets out there, and Jeffrey Goldberg is being praised as an American patriot. That's literally the language they're using. He did his duty to show us this. But the fact of the matter is that the people watching this are being told we have to be angry because our national security is at risk, and our American military is at risk. No. Who is at risk? The innocent people in Yemen who we just murdered. That's who's at risk. And that's what we should really be mad about. And obviously, this, we know this, all of our audiences know this. But unfortunately, there's too many American people that are waiting to be told what to be angry at, so then they can go out and say, you see what Trump did? He put some imbecile in charge, and we need to fire him and get business back to usual, which is their plan the whole time.
In fact, let me read this from Moon of Alabama, who always has some good stories. The Atlantic is the worst magazine in America. Its editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, dropped out of an Ivy League university to volunteer to be an IDF prison guard during the first Palestinian Intifada. In his memoirs, Goldberg revealed that he helped cover up serious prisoner abuse. Oh, that's our American patriot who's standing up for blah, 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 right? It's always... Why is it always somebody that was in the IDF? If I'm watching a movie, hey, Wonder Woman, where'd she come from? She's former IDF. You know what I mean? Everybody, if I'm going to see somebody out here, they got to be a former IDF or like an IDF guard or an IDF apologist, you know? And so this guy, I'm supposed to believe, well, I mean, I don't even know what to believe. First of all, I'm supposed to believe that a guy who was a diehard anti-Trumper, right? Mm-hmm. I'm supposed to believe that somebody accidentally added him to this list of people, and that nobody on the list looked and said, hey, who the hell is this guy? Wait a minute. That nobody was like, hey, before we send this stuff out, we better check to make sure that everybody on this list, you know, is not like, I don't know, whatever, somebody they wouldn't want to. No, that they accidentally added this guy on. And then when I read what was on the list, that's the only thing that we're talking about. We're not talking about what's going on with Israel. We're not talking about the actual bombing itself. We're not talking about the fact that there's a narrative going on here, shift, where even if we're allowed, we talk about what was in that, we have to talk about the fact that J.D. Vance said, we're not bailing out Europe. Right, J.D. Vance on this thing says, "Well, I don't want to." Well, let's not. No, in a way, I'm. What do you call it? You know, maybe this isn't his exact words, but this is kind of the way it comes across.
Yeah.
Why are we bailing out Europe? Why are we clearing out the Red Sea for Europe so that European ships can go up and down? So now the discussion, particularly amongst the MAGA people, is, yeah, why are we doing this for Europe? It's the last time I checked, the Ansar Allah, the Houthis, didn't say anything about Europe. They said they're doing it because Israel started starving people again and cutting off their electricity and food and water, not the Europeans, who, might I add, have a hand in this. But you get my point. So now we get to talk about Jeffrey Goldberg, this neocon former IDF guy. We get to talk about, well, why are we doing this for Europe? Well, maybe we should. Maybe should do it for Europe. The things we can't talk about is that we're actually doing it to cover up Israel that's doing something wrong and illegal. And we're actually doing something that is illegal under the U.S. Constitution and U.S. law.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And the fact that, again, the mainstream media, their job is to protect this narrative and protect Israel and the war machine that U.S. is that we're funding. Our taxpayer dollars are going to this. That's what's happening. And so when you leave out the part about why Yemenis are in the street, what are they protesting? This idea that the Houthis, we got to stop the Houthis, is the same garbage we use about Hamas and all this different, like, we have to get the terrorists. It's like, no, the people of Yemen are in the streets in masses right now because they have the courage to stand up for what's right, for humanity. And they are the poorest country in that entire region. And that just shows another level of courage that they're willing to do this and put everything on the line to be in the streets, knowing what kind of pushback they're going to get from the empire, which we are. We are the empire. We are the axis of evil. As we were talking on our show, Homeless Love, we're like, it's interesting how we switched sides here. We are the problem. But we've known this. But I think a lot of people are waking up to this. I think so. I think less people are watching the mainstream, doing the same old blueprint, and they're starting to get curious. They're starting to get concerned. Why are all these people in the streets? Is everybody in the planet right now all of a sudden anti-Semitic? Is that what's happening? I mean, people are paying more attention. They're going, no, something bigger is going on here. And I'm sick and tired of CNN, MSNBC, Fox News lying to me every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Look, if you and I were going to do a show on what's happening, the Yemen attacks on shipping in the sea, denying a particular sea lane, fighting it out with Israel, whatever, right? And we're going to. Then they said, "Well, Garland, I'm hiring you to do a professional show on it." To me, here's the show that I would have to do. Let's bring in international lawyers and human rights lawyers and people who can evaluate international law. Now, think about this. This is the show. Garland, you got 30 minutes on CNN to do a show about Yemen. What are you going to do? I'm going to bring in lawyers and I'm going to ask this question. Yemen argues that under international law, they have a duty to act. They're saying international law says if there is an ongoing genocide, all countries have a duty to do whatever they can do. I think it's almost like that, word for word like that, right? Whatever they can do to stop it, to prevent it, whatever the case may be, right? So that's Yemen's legal argument. You give me 30 minutes on CNN and say you have to cover. I'm not talking about Jeffrey Goldberg. I'm not talking about even the moral or religious issue, because under international law, that doesn't matter. I would say we need to determine whether they have a legal foundation to their argument. Because if they have a legal foundation to their argument, the United States would have to be on their side, not fighting them. That's the only thing that matters. Isn't it interesting that their legal claim, which is really the determinant factor here, is the one thing you can't explore? Because I think most people know the answer, because the International Criminal Court has already found probable cause, or at minimum reasonable suspicion that I'll put it like this: they have found enough of a foundation that they're continuing with the case of genocide, which in and of itself, to me, gives Yemen the foundation they need to act. But if we're professional media, shouldn't we be having that discussion instead of about whether you should use Signal or WhatsApp?
Garland, I'm sure they'd give you that half-hour spot. It's just that they have so much other important content to get to do. They have so many commercials they got to cut to Pfizer commercials, and they got so much lined up. I'm sure they'll get back to you as soon as something frees up. So I would just wait by the phone. They're going to call you one of these days, Garland, because they certainly should agree with your sentiment here.
Yeah, there'll be like a skeleton by the phone with cobwebs on it, waiting for CNN, with a little sign, waiting for CNN, But, the thing about it is, I think there's so much that deserves to be discussed. Now, another thing I want to throw at you about that, well, I might not even say which war. Let's just talk about the wars and connect them. A while back, I did a segment about Ukraine and the Gaza conflict and Israel conflict. And I said, the US has, they're evil twins, right? And I basically showed how they're so identical. And if you understand MI6, right, you understand that MI6, the way the Brits view empire now is this, like that song, I got the brains, you got the brawn, let's make some money, right? That's the way they see it. We're really good at going around the world, disrupting, making people fight amongst each other, interior in countries, do all these devious things. The US has this powerful military. We're going to go around the world and make some money, right? So when you look at Zelensky, he's an MI6 creation. Where does he always run when he gets in trouble? To London. Who is it that went over to nix the Istanbul deal? Bojo. He's an MI6 creation. When you look at Israel, MI6 really is more doing, you could argue they're doing more puppeting than here. Here's my point. Isn't it an interesting coincidence that at the same time they start back up, right? But Israel is clearly targeting journalists. And now, if you look at what's happening in Ukraine, they're absolutely targeting Russian journalists at the same time. And I look at it, I'm like, that's not an accident. That is MI6 saying, look, you know what? That's something we need to shut the mouths of journalists. Bad things are going on that we don't want people to see. Maybe in Ukraine, it could be this. Look, we ain't doing so well. And we don't want Russian journalists reporting that we're not doing well because we may not get our money and weapons. In Israel, there's obvious reasons they don't want people to see what they're doing. What do you think about what's going on with the murder of journalism, the mouth being shut in the journalists, in so-called journalists in the West, and all of that, Matt?
Yeah, no, this is a great comparison here, Garland, because we see exactly the same thing happening in both areas. This is where we're packaging a narrative to our civilization, to the people the American people to get to manufacture consent, to borrow a term from Noam Chomsky. The way you manufacture consent is you create a storyline that both of these countries, these are democracies, right? So you have the greatest democracy in the Middle East. You have we're protecting democracy in Ukraine. So in order to keep this narrative alive, which they've had to do in Ukraine for the last 2.5 years, in a year and a half now, they've had to really double down that in Israel. But you can't have journalists on the ground reporting what's actually happening. So you have to shut that down. And so even in Ukraine, from the beginning, we've had journalists that had reported back that they're not able to get into places that they usually would be able to get into. Everything was like need to know basis, very, very secretive stuff. And you're right, they have been targeting journalists and taking them out in Ukraine. In Israel, it's even far worse because we know that there are at least 200 dead. These are the local journalists in Palestine dead over the last year and a half. And then since the ceasefire was broken, we've had just back-to-back murders of journalists in Israel. This just happened in Palestine. It was the reporter from Palestine Today TV. This was just 2 days ago. This was Mohad Mansour. He was killed by an airstrike. It targeted him. This is not, and I think people need to understand, these aren't accidental killings. These are targeted deaths. They have to shut the feed off. They have to turn it off and not let them have their report come from the ground. So Mohammed Mansour, he was killed on Monday. 3 hours later, another journalist killed, Hussam Shabat, and he was very young. He was 23 years old. And he just an Israeli airstrike targeted him. He's dead. This is happening. There should be an outcry in the West of why is this happening? If anything, if you believe that Ukraine is in the right, if you believe that Israel is in the right, then give us the journalism from the ground. Give us the thing. And if you think that they're misreporting it and they're giving us quote unquote misinformation or Russian propaganda or anti-Semitic reporting, whatever you think it is, let us hear it. Let us hear it and let us determine for ourselves. That's how information should go. That's how journalism should be. And the fact that anyone's being targeted that's doing journalism, that's your red flag right there. And we know exactly who's doing it. It's the people trying to pretend that they are democracies when really these are fascist states. Both of them, Ukraine and Israel, are both fascist states.
And I would argue at this point, which means they are expressions of the U.S. empire. Because that's where we are. I don't know, you could make an argument that we've been in there and out of there. You can make an argument that but how can you have a country that's committing a genocide? Because the U.S. is committing genocide. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, they're using U.S., as soon as the October 7th happened, which there is information is looking like one of these 9/11 things, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of information that makes you real suspicious, shall we say. But as soon as that happens, and the U.S. immediately sends all of these U.S. military people over there, and we know there was military people on the ground. Biden got in trouble because he was shaking hands. Remember that? He was shaking hands with U.S. Special Forces on the ground days after it happened, and he got in trouble. Then they're like, oh, you're not supposed to get that picture out. They're not supposed to know we got boots, quote, boots on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. Then we send like generals and colonels to direct the operation. We send an armada of ships, right? So we got military people on the ground. We are doing the space-based intel. We're doing all the bombs and bullets and all that stuff. We're doing, armadas of ships, right? When Iran fired some missiles a while back, all of NATO, French, all of NATO was there trying to stop the missiles coming in, which we still couldn't stop them, which tells you something. Mm-hmm. But my point being, I got to say this. I don't see this like Israel is some separate country and the U.S. is either stopping them from doing it or assisting them. I see Israel as an element of U.S. hegemony, an element almost like if the U.S. had a base in way out in Canada and somebody attacked the base and they came in and protected our base. To me, I don't see any difference. I don't see that, verbally using words, we can disconnect the U.S. from Israel. But in the real world, when everything they're using is ours, including people in a lot of instances, how do we say this is Israel and why don't we stop them as opposed to we are doing it?
No, this is you hit it on the head, Garland. This is exactly, we are tied to the hip. We don't even have a choice, and I think that's the really sad reality, in the curtain being pulled back moment we've had, and a lot of people have noticed, since October 7th, just how tied we are. We don't have a choice. Our elected officials don't have a choice. They have to swear an oath, to Israel, to U.S. These everybody with their joint citizenship and or dual citizenship, and then you have these government workers all around the country. There's at least, I believe, at least 18 states, if not more, where if you're going to even take a federal job, you have to swear allegiance to Israel, which means you can't protest, have a discussion, just even ask a question. You have to give 100% loyalty. We don't even have that rule about you have to do that to America. So it's actually worse than saying an equal loyalty. It's actually putting Israel first and America at a far distant second, which it sounds like we are all kind of realizing that's what all of our elected officials do. They put Israel first. So tied to the hip, absolutely. Is Israel an arm for us? I used to think Israel was an extension of us. No, I think we're an extension of Israel. They're calling the shots. That's it.
Well, I'll put it like this. There's a lot of ways we can choose verbally to express this or rhetorically to express this, but it all comes down to the same thing. We can say Israel's controlling us. We can say Israel's a part of us. I could say Israel is the U.S. empire's top priority. You know what I mean? That's another thing, that of all of the tools, because it's a tool, it's where we have our intelligence hub, our military hub, and of course, I don't know how much you know about Israel, but a whole lot of money gets hidden in Israel. A whole lot of crooked
Yep.
money from crooked oligarchs is laundered through Israel. But the bottom line is this: it is not just a valuable tool of the empire. It is the most valuable tool of the empire, which makes it the priority for the empire. The empire looks at Israel and says, if we don't have that tool, that geopolitical, that military, that intelligence, that economic tool, if we don't have that, we cease to be an empire, right? It's almost like this. You're getting in a fight with someone, right? What are you going to do? Somebody comes at somebody with something. What do they do automatically? They throw up their hands.
Yeah,
Why?
exactly.
They want to protect their head. Right? You're trying to defend yourself or something. What do you want to do ideally? Well, you're going to pick any weak spot, but if you can get a blow to the head, that's the command center. If you knock them silly, you might just want to get away. And if you can get a good blow to the head and knock them silly, you can take off and run, right? Here's a priority, right? And you have priority. Now you have other priority areas, maybe the groin, maybe the solar plexus, whatever. You may have priority areas, eyes, but the head, this is your priority area. You can't take a blow to the head or you die. Okay. I think I look at Israel something like that, like the U.S. empire says, of all these things that make up you could divide them up, but they all make up the U.S. empire. Whether it's Guam, the Marshall Islands, they're all owned by us. You know what I mean? All these things. Okay, Puerto Rico, whatever. Okay, these are all parts of the empire, but the empire says, but this one right here, Israel, where all the oil is, that's our priority first. And I don't care what happens. We must always protect that no matter what we have to do. The gloves come off. The mask comes off. We got to pretend that like we're not genocidal maniacs. But if there's a threat to our number one asset, then the hell with it. We'll just let everybody know we're genocidal maniacs. If it's between that and controlling this number one asset, that's the way I look at it, Matt.
No, you're connecting the dots here for me, because I'm now saying the idea that you have to protect the head. You're protecting the head of the beast, and then we in fact are the arms of that beast. To put our arms up to protect the head. So it's a beautiful analogy, and it's very twisted when you really look at that, because then you can it kind of informs us how all of our foreign policy has worked, and it's been working this way the last several decades, and it's just more obvious now. And I think in the age of social media, in the age of us being able to share, images and videos on our cell phones, and we can communicate across the globe, I think that now's the time where the narrative's falling apart. I think it's time that people connect on a global level. I mean, we're heading in the age of globalism. We might as well use it to our advantage and have these conversations that we didn't have at all. I mean, that's the good news, I think, Garland, is that we didn't have these conversations. At least I'm not aware of all the information that we have now in our cell phones. We didn't know this 20 years ago. We didn't know this 30 years ago. it was easier for them to protect this. It was easier for them to preach about democracy and all the stuff that we know from the Bush administration and all, and well before that as well. I mean, just the idea that we're the good guys, we're policing the world in order to bring democracy and save democracy, all that stuff. So that we can't do that anymore. If Israel is that beast, the head of the beast that we're protecting and we're championing, and it's got to stop. I think it's not sustainable beyond a certain point. But we might be living through that time right now. This transition of power. I hope so. I'm trying to stay optimistic with all these horrible things we keep hearing about on a day-to-day basis here. But I guess that's why these conversations are so important, Garland.
Yeah, let's move to something else that I think is important. So let me see. There's two particular NBA players. A life-threatening blood clot sidelined NBA All-Star Victor Wembanyama, and it's deep vein thrombosis, right? Deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder, a serious condition when a blood clot forms in a vein deep in the body. So poor old Victor Wembanyama had this unfortunate. Hold on a second here. Sorry about that. My little thing's spinning, so I'll be able to get out of that in a second. Okay. Next, I got another one I got to show you. Let me find it. Share screen. Recently, another player, Damian Lillard, diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis in right calf. Milwaukee's star guard is on blood thinning medication, which has stabilized it and will continue with regular testing. Apparently, he's out also. Now, I don't want anybody to take this wrong, because Matt and I are like, we're all for boosters. In fact, I'll be honest, I wouldn't even let Matt can't come on unless he takes a booster before we do this. We both like watch each other in the mirror to make sure we on video to make sure we get a booster before we do that, our show, and afterwards. And of course, everybody knows in the chat, I make them show their cards in order to come in the chat, because we want to be safe and effective here. Everybody's got to get their boosters, and probably I think one a week may not be enough. We may switch to 2 a week. So boosters are great and they're safe and effective, and they don't cause any bad things. But this strange phenomenon that couldn't have possibly have been predicted in any way, Matt, what do you think about this? Maybe it's like measles. You know, measles is killing hundreds of thousands of people a day right now in America. And maybe this is something like measles. Maybe they're like catching it from each other when they sweat or something. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this deep vein thrombosis, blood clots suddenly becoming an epidemic, shall we say, in the NBA?
Well, the problem is, Garland, is my memory is so short, so I can't think back beyond when they rolled this thing out, and all the NBA players were forced to take it, and if you didn't take it, you were Kyrie Irving or somebody else that stood up and said, "No, I don't want to do this." You were shunned, you were humiliated, you were bullied. And then everybody got in line, and they said, yeah, shun these people like Kyrie Irving. I remember, if you remember that one. So I guess I'm assuming all the rest of them did get the thing. So that's because they were forced to do it. They did it. So, but the problem is, Garland, I don't remember what happened before that. So when I see people like Victor Wembanyama and Damian Lillard, this just happened. We found this out about Damian Lillard. Exact same diagnosis. It says to me, and these blood clots that are forming in these NBA, and these are athletic people. These are like the most athletic people in our society. It's pretty incredible. They're getting these blood clots. They're getting ruled out for an entire season. I guess this has always been happening. That's what I think is. It must have always been this way. There's probably a ton of examples of NBA players suffering from this regularly. Well before they rolled this thing out. So I can't imagine it has anything to do with that at all. And we're not, and by the way, the younger they are, we know in males, there's a massive, these heart problems that are happening. We have not just the myocarditis, which, by the way, myocarditis, they had said officially that it might be linked. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but it might be linked to the thing. But it's interesting that we have these young people falling down in the middle of an athletic event, whatever it is, a basketball practice. I mean, look at little Bronny James had a heart attack in the middle of a USC basketball practice.
And might I add, He was the second player on his team to
Yeah.
have a heart attack.
Yeah.
They were like 1918, 1920. Two kids on one team had a heart
Yeah.
attack. And here's the thing about it. Okay, these things happen, right? But here's the way I look at it. If you're really being honest about it, people should have a discussion, right?
Mhm.
I remember I was watching a Sunday night football game, and this kid from the Buffalo Bills,
Mhm.
right? D back, and he hit somebody and falls down dead. He was not breathing. His heart stopped, and they thank God. I think he's back now, but they gave him mouth to mouth, all that kind of stuff. They saved his life, right? Okay. And people were saying, well, that's kind of weird, right? And what was interesting was there were all of these articles, and the articles always went like this. We know it wasn't the thing. Wasn't that? These crazy conspiracy theorists are implying that it's that. We know it's that. It was not, absolutely wasn't that. Now, we don't know what it is yet. And I'm like, time out. Logically speaking, that's mutually exclusive language. I don't know what it is. Hey, Garland dropped dead. Really? What did he die of? We don't know what it is, but we know it wasn't a drug overdose.
Yeah.
How
We
does
know
it
what
work
it's
that you
not.
don't? Yeah, how does that work, Matt? And why do we keep kind of getting that same way? They like if you were to come out and say, I think it's X. This video might be off. We might be off. We'd be, you know what I mean? I mean, you can't come out and just say, I think it may be this.
Yeah.
Which kind of like tells you something, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely does. And people have been wired to be okay with that language, that approach to investigative. I mean, we call it investigative journalism, but just having critical thinking skills kind of taken out of your lexicon of ability to process information. They've been going on this from the beginning. If you remember, I was thinking about Hammond, Damar Hammond from when that Monday
Yes,
night.
that was the guy I was thinking about.
Yeah. So he goes down. And they say, oh no, this regularly happens. Players get hit and they go down. Well, nothing like this really happens. It was so common that they had to bring Dr. Fauci on CVS and talk about this. And he was the first one to say this language at that time. He says, we are looking into it. We're trying to figure this out. And by the way, Dr. Fauci doesn't have any patients himself. So when he talks like he goes and looks at stuff. Now he doesn't actually have patients. But putting that aside, he started using that verbiage. We know what it's not. And so from then on, it's like people are like, okay with that. Like, oh yeah, we don't know what it is, but we know what it's not. And they've been using this. They've been whipping out that language every single time we have an incident where doctors are baffled. And we hear that all the time. Doctors are baffled, but we know what it's not. Don't you dare bring it up. Don't you dare say the thing, because that we know. Really, how can you know? This thing has been experimental this whole time. We have no long-term data. We know that Pfizer tried to, suppress the information of all the possible side effects. We have it all now, but we're not allowed to have a conversation. And what's worse, Garland, is there's not enough people that are furious about that. Why aren't we allowed to have a conversation? So yeah, I guess same old business as usual. NBA players going down for the rest of the season. And I'll add this in. The fact that they've minimized that, the idea that if you get a myocarditis, or another diagnosis, and even these two players that went down with the blood clots, and what you said, deep vein thrombosis, they're minimizing the effects of these. They're telling the audience, the people, the fans, they're telling them, oh, they're just out for the season. Everything will be fine. Will it be fine? Really? And by the way, will Bronny James ever really be fine? I've noticed he never plays more than a few minutes at a time, ever. It's interesting. We think about how bad these diagnoses are on the long term. Really? Are you really going to be okay? So we got to get more concerned about what's happening to everybody. But yeah, they'll downplay this thing. Oh, it's just a little, he stubbed his toe kind of situation. No, these are life altering diagnoses that change your course of your life forever.
I'm always suspicious. One of the things to me that's always makes me suspicious is when you can't talk about something and you're like, I remember when the whole Seth Rich thing happened, right? And Seth Rich got shot, and a lot of people said, well, that's weird. I mean, he was shot in the back, and what we were told to be was a robbery attempt, and they didn't take anything, right? Well, that's weird. And then it was in Washington D.C., and Washington D.C. Metro Police was handling it, and then next thing you know, they say, oh no, the FBI came in and took it. And then we find out the FBI took his laptop, and they wouldn't admit that they had it for like a year. And I mean, and it goes on and on and on. And at that time, when I'll never forget, when that Seth Rich thing happened, you damn better not talk about that on YouTube, or you were demonetized.
Yeah.
If you tweeted about Seth Rich, it was, these are crazy conspiracy theories. And I'm like, and then we find out that he actually worked in the computer room, and he had access to all the DNC computer information, and that he had the ability to take anything that he wanted, and that someone apparently had taken the emails and given them the WikiLeaks. And then WikiLeaks comes out and says, yeah, we got a $20,000 reward for finding out whoever killed Seth. And I'm like, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this one out. It's worth asking the question, hey, could this guy have been the WikiLeaks leaker? And if he was, why would the FBI be hiding stuff? And why was he shot, right? First, perfectly reasonable questions. And you couldn't ask anything about it online, or you would be demonetized, thrown off, you name it. And at the time, every time I see something you can't talk about, I say, oh, that's it.
Yeah. Garland, I'm glad you brought up Seth Rich, because that kind of reminds us that this conditioning of the public and conditioning of journalists, people who even consider themselves independent journalists. I'm not working for MSNBC. I remember that it was like the Young Turks. They're the ones that freaked out at the time when the Seth Rich thing happened. When guys like Jimmy Dore were like saying, no, we need to have this discussion. And so people turning on each other in the world of journalism, where you're supposed to be asking these questions more than the general public. But it was this ability to get everybody conditioned to be like, how dare you bring that up? And this was going on way before COVID, right? So the pieces had been set for people before COVID to then respond this way when things happen, and you're not allowed to say that. How dare you say that thing that we know that it's not? We know Seth Rich had nothing to do with anything. That was a botched robbery. Really? A botched robbery? They didn't. It was pretty botched, wasn't it? And he didn't really
take anything.
Yeah.
And they shot him in the back. I mean, like a robbery, they're facing you from the front, give me your money or whatever. They shot him in the back.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing is what you find on Google, because Dwayne Wade recently, they said Dwayne Wade had cancer, kidney cancer or something like that. There was a story about it. So I did a search, Dwayne Wade COVID vaccine. And there was all of these articles where apparently he and his wife, when the vaccines came out, were doing all of these things for vaccines. They were doing advertisements, and they were telling everybody, you got to get it. So they were doing a lot of this. And apparently he either had a contract or something with Pfizer or one of these vaccine makers, right? That you could search all over and find that, right? Try doing it now. See, it's interesting how Google works, right? If you search, COVID vaccine, Dwayne Wade now, all of those stories that about 2 weeks ago, when I first heard about him having kidney cancer and and I just searched and I saw all of this stuff about how he had advocated for the vaccine. And now if you search the exact same words, all of that stuff is gone. Yeah. If you search Google now for things, it'll tell you what it's like so obvious that Google, let me put it a different way. I've said this. When people said, okay, they're getting rid of USAID and National Endowment for Democracy, hooray, that means the regime change stuff is over, right? My first thought was the biggest propaganda machine is Google. If you don't go after Google, you've wasted your time. And I just now know, like, if I research something, like for instance, if I was to research Victor Wimbiana and what's his name? And Lillard blood clots, I would find all of these articles that told me athletes have been having blood clots for millions of years, thousands, hundreds of years. When NBA created with the peach basket, the guy that hit in the hand on the peach basket, it had a blood clot. It's like, it's so obvious that whatever the story that they want you to follow along is there, that they adjust the search results
Sure.
specific to that.
Yeah. No, Google is notorious for adjusting search results. I mean, that's what they're about, and the justification is keeping the community safe, right? That's the YouTube. It's all the same thing. It's when you get these strikes, when things get removed, we're trying to keep the community safe. So safe from conversations like these, Garland. That's the whole point. Is we can't look into these things. It's harder to do it on Google. You're right. Like these stories, they disappear. So we have to find other ways to do it. We get our information on Twitter. A lot of times people have screen grabbed this stuff, so we can. It's not going to go away if you screen grab it. You can post it up and go, oh, look at that article about Dwayne Wade uh, getting paid a bunch of money for promoting the vaccine. Oh, look at that. We got a screen grab. It's not going away. It went out there at one point, so that's our duty. I think we have to keep tabs on this stuff. No, we should anticipate this stuff goes away and grab it and keep it in the files, and we can use it and utilize it in the future. So.
Yeah, there was also something else I thought interesting. We always touch into Hollywood. So there was the director of this documentary, right? Which a lot of people were surprised because it was one would argue pro-Palestinian. I would argue it was just real and honest. I mean, as Malcolm X said, he said, if I tell the truth, if the truth is un-American, don't blame me, blame the truth, right?
Yeah.
So if you put the facts on, hey, if the facts are pro-Palestinian, don't blame me, blame the facts. So this was an honest a documentary, and this guy goes back to the Middle East, and I don't think it was an accident that they specifically targeted him. And tell everybody what happened to the story here, Matt.
Okay, so the co-director of the film, No Other Land, which won Best Documentary. This was just 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago, right here in Hollywood. It's the most prestigious award you can get. Everybody here knows that the Oscar, holding an Oscar. Now, obviously, we've talked about how that has kind of gone downhill over the last several years. But when an honest film like this gets recognition, and let's be clear, the only reason this film got recognition was because the other co-director is Israeli. They knew to team up together and make it kind of a community piece from, I guess you can say, from both sides. But it was a collection of work about a story that actually happened in the West Bank, and this was actually way before October 7th. So they've been working on this for several years. They've got it together. There were all these other awards it won before Hollywood noticed, and they noticed it was getting all these other awards. The Academy Award was the top prize, and that was just 3.5 weeks ago. So they get on the stage, they have this amazing moment where you have this coming together of these two points of views that were basically championing, let's stop occupying people and ruining their lives and taking their all this stuff, like that we should all agree on, a humanitarian cause. So that's what the film is about. From there, I would say, yeah, we didn't see this coming. I couldn't believe this, but when we saw that the co-director, the Israeli director, he posted this out 2 days ago that Hamdan Balal, that's the Palestinian director, his friend. I mean, they're friends. He says he was abducted. He was taken by the IDF, we think, from the ambulance after he was attacked. So first the guy was attacked on the street. The ambulance comes. He's completely beat up. He's completely hurt. He's got massive injuries. He gets put in the ambulance. And then from the ambulance, the IDF, the military, takes him out and takes him away. And nobody knows where he is for 24 hours. And so everybody's like saying, where the hell did this guy go? The Israel propaganda comes out. They're saying things like the Jerusalem Post posted, no IDF soldier did this. They're making it up. That didn't happen. They did not take him from the ambulance. We know, we've checked this. Yes, they did. Absolutely, they did this. As far as why this happened, obviously you have these made up stories about, oh, he was throwing rock. We've heard this. He was throwing rocks at this. Yeah, right. He wasn't throwing rocks. There's eyewitnesses to say he was targeted because he was the filmmaker who won the Oscar. And now we have his own words. Now that he's home, and thank God he was taken, he was released. He's saying himself, Hamdan Balal is saying himself that as his whole body is in pain, he was listening He couldn't see anything because he was blindfolded, but he could hear the voices of the soldiers, and they were laughing at him. And he heard them say the word Oscar, but he doesn't speak Hebrew, so he was just piecing it together. That's his own account of what happened.
Yeah, well, here's what's interesting. Even this is Haaretz, right? A propaganda. Will the violent settler assault on the Palestinian Oscar winner reshape the way we see the Israeli occupation? They left something out. The violent settlers weren't the only ones. No, it wasn't the violent settler issue. Is not the issues. We know who the violent settlers are. However, it is the responsibility of the state. Namely, there was Israeli police and our soldiers in the area. So let's start here. They stood and watched and protected the violent settlers, number one. Number two, afterwards, they dragged this guy away and violently attacked him themselves, assaulted him themselves, right? So even Haaretz, which is ostensibly left when it comes to Israel, can't come out and say the issue is the government was behind the violence and committed violence against this guy intentionally because of what happened, because of what he did, because of him being in the United States and doing something in the United States that's protected law. Yeah. No, it was the violent settlers. And even that's propaganda. Again, you know what? The term is distraction. Whether it's signal, don't talk about the fact that we're killing people. Talk about the fact that we used the wrong app. Oh, don't talk about the fact that the government dragged this guy away of Israel and beat him and did terrible things. Talk about the fact that people on the street did it. You know what I mean? They're always distracting us. They give us a story to talk about. This is what you're allowed to talk about. Don't talk about the devious and evil things that we're doing.
Yeah. And in this case, with this particular situation, it is absolutely appalling that you have an industry here in Hollywood that was completely silent over these last 48 hours, hasn't said a word about this. And I mentioned this filmmaking team, they've won other awards in other parts of the world. And all of those, whatever you call those film organizations came together in unison, in support for the film, for Hamdan, for Balal. And they were so Hollywood is the only one that stayed silent. And that says something, that the Academy Award, the people that gave him an Oscar 3.5 weeks ago, had nothing to say. And the few people that spoke up, and I have to give a shout out because we've been harsh on certain actors here. We have to call out their BS.
Sure.
But sometimes they get it right. And I'm going to give a shout out to Mark Ruffalo, got this one right. And he's paying a price right now. He is getting bombarded in his Twitter feed. He's getting harassed for what? For a message he put out on his Twitter yesterday before the filmmaker was returned. We still didn't know where he was. And Mark Ruffalo says every filmmaker and Academy member should be acting together in protest. No matter where you stand on this issue, this is an attack on our beloved art form of filmmaking. Hamdan Balal is a political prisoner, and this is an international incident and violation of human rights. Many of us are not surprised by this behavior from the lawless settlers and the IDF at this point. Killed journalists and abducting filmmakers is not an accident, but a design for the eradication of a people and their culture. And like I said, he's been getting attacked for this obvious thing, you have to say. And he's one of very few that are saying this. So I wanted to read that for your viewers. But this is just a complete, it's an embarrassment to be part of an industry that would stay silent on this, on somebody that we should be protecting, because what a great film he made. And we should be protecting that. And the right for artists to tell stories and not feel like they have to have a bullseye on their back after telling a story like this.
And with the story out there and with the film out there, I think they made a decision of triage. Okay, if we don't let him get the actor and we don't bring him in here, people are going to make a lot of noise. So we'll probably let him come in and we'll give him the Oscar. And that way, at least they'll say we're doing the right thing or whatever, but we get a lot more heat if we didn't, right? And then, of course, he goes back and we'll just beat the daylights out of him and we'll make sure that everybody knows you're not allowed to do this. So to me, it's like part of a filthy system. Here's another thing. Let's look at this. It's not another thing, but it's another indicator. Trump defends National Security Advisor Mike Waltz amid fallout from signal text on Houthi attack, right? Again, I don't want to get caught up in talking about that and not the fact that they killed, but I'll take it from this perspective. Nothing's going to happen to anyone. And I may be wrong. The reason I think it is I think the whole thing was a game. The whole thing was a distraction. The whole thing was to get us talking about everything. But the fact that Donald Trump said, hey, judge me by the wars I stop and judge me by the wars I don't start. And 8 weeks into his administration, we're seeing that he's just another warmonger, a different variety. You know, some people like chocolate, strawberry, you know, banana cream, whatever your flavor of warmonger is. He's a different flavor of warmonger, but he's still a warmonger. And the stories that we were told, Joe Biden's going to give you free college and $20 minimum wage or some such crap. Trump, we're going to bring good jobs back and peace. And I'm not starting wars. All of this stuff. It's just what they say before the election. Then after the election, who we going to bomb? Any damn body we can. Make sure they're poor and they're civilians. That's the only two criteria I want for bombing somebody. It'd be nice if they were brown. If they're not, okay, you got to play the hand you're dealt. But first of all, they got to be poor civilians that aren't able to defend themselves.
Yeah. No, this is 100% Garland. I do have to say that in these first 2 months, it's inspiring to see that a lot of people that did vote for Trump are having second thoughts now. But more than that, they're not saying, oh, I wish I didn't vote for him, because it's not like they were going to vote for the current, warmongering.
Yeah, exactly.
They weren't going to vote for that wasn't going to happen. But the point is, they're saying this isn't what we voted for. We're not okay with this. And that's what we need. We need more of that, of holding the people accountable. It's easy to bitch and whine about the people you didn't vote for. Look at those a-holes and all the horrible things they're doing, and they're the next Hitler, all this stuff. But to hold people accountable that you did vote for, you're supposed to do a better job than this. This is not what you campaigned on. And they're furious right now. They're furious at the Israel first policy. This isn't to make America great again.
Right.
This is keep Israel number one, or whatever you want to call it. It's make Israel great again, whatever the hell you call it. Guess what's also being sabotaged? The MAHA movement. The MAHA movement, make America healthy again. That's not exactly happening the way it was said to be happening either. So we are seeing pushback from the people that voted for that ticket. And that's good to see. I like seeing that, because we don't really see any of that on the left. They don't have any critique for the people they vote for. And too bad, because if you were to push back, let's just say there was any pushback over the previous 4 years, who knows? Maybe they would have to have addressed it. Maybe they would have had to say, maybe we got Ukraine wrong. Maybe we got COVID wrong. Maybe we didn't really champion the worker. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we actually started a genocide. Oopsie. I mean, I'm not saying all those things would happen, but if you push back, there has to be some sort of maneuver on their end. And that's what we're waiting for now. We're waiting for some sort of maneuver on Trump's end of, how are you going to respond to these people? How are you going to respond to people calling out RFK right now for not doing his job? Did you see his latest post on
No.
This guy? If you want to look this up. Okay, so Kennedy, as you guys know, as the head of the Health and Human Services now, he has he tweets out from the account. It's Secretary Kennedy. That's
right.
His account. And he should be focusing on the things he campaigned on, which was what? Challenging big food, challenging big pharma. Why is he tweeting out from the Health and Human Services Twitter site? Why is he tweeting out about the biggest problem is anti-Semitism on college campuses? We have to do something about anti-Semitism. What the hell is going on? And more importantly, the MAHA people are furious. They're saying, stay in your lane and do the thing that you said you were going to do.
That's a good point. That's a good point, because he's got a responsibility and people are asking questions. You know, I haven't got a chance. I've just started looking at this threat assessment, right? The Intel community threat assessments, which goes through Tulsi Gabbard. Certainly we know this is machine, but it starts off the threat of the Communist Party of China. China's doing this, China's doing that, right? Okay. So you're telling me you're here to bring peace and do this and that, and all I'm getting when I look at the paperwork that's coming out, the things that are coming out from the government, is the same old adversaries. There's new, with the exception of Russia. Trump done what He's claiming that. I'm guaranteed the Russians don't trust him, because if I don't trust him and I'm an American, why the hell would the Russians trust him? Whatever. But I get the same old China stuff. And what we're finding is that in this empire, there's no room for, at this point, a mainstream movement in one of the parties that has some kind of class concerns with, working people. There's no room for that. We're always going to get, it's either going to be something about anti-Semitism and Israel. And let me throw this at you, because it popped into my mind. So what do we get from Trump and all of these guys? There's no racism in America. There's no such thing as racism. Racism does not exist. No, there is no racism. I don't care what you think about that. That's a position they take. Now, what's going on? Anti-Semitism! It's everywhere! It's endemic! Now, wait a minute. Time out. I'm not going to argue with you about whether racism exists or it doesn't exist. You have taken a political position. You have taken a cultural position. No racism in this country. I don't know what you're talking about. These fools talking about their racism exists. It doesn't exist. That's your position. You're right. You have every right to take that political position. But then when you turn around, do we have any problems whatsoever? Yeah, only one. What's that? Anti-Semitism. Really? How bad is it? Endemic. Everything's anti-Semitic. The college, Jewish people, rabbis are anti-Semitic. Everybody's anti-Semitic here. And you know what we got to do? We got to throw them out of this country. We got to throw them out of colleges. We got to fire them. We can't allow them to get government contracts. This anti-Semitism is everywhere. Does racism exist? Oh, hell no, there's no such thing as racism. I don't want to argue with you of whether racism exists or not. But you look like a complete liar and a fraud. And I believe this. We all know it ain't about anti-Semitism, that all you're doing is trying to protect Israel and Zionism, and you're reinterpreting any critique of Israel and Zionism, any critique of that whatsoever that's not positive, is then simply you turn it into anti-Semitism so you can take the person out.
I'm going to go even further and say this, Garland. With the anger about the anti-Semitism, I think we assume we're kind of giving this like benefit of the doubt that the goal is to solve the problem and then not be angry anymore. No, they have to fuel it. They want it. They need it. If it really was something, now let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They actually believe it. Okay, you didn't believe all the other races and all the other, all the other people that were being hurt or for whatever reason. You said no. There's no racism problem. Okay, let's take your word for it. There's an anti-Semitism problem. Okay. So if you wanted to fix that problem, what's the first thing you should do? You should go to the source of the thing that you think is causing it. No interest in going there. Not an interest at all. So every sign points to, not only do you want to, so the idea is that you want to keep it going. You want to keep as much of it going as possible. How do you do that? You create more situations that's going to piss people off and get them out in the streets. So then you can then accuse them more of the thing that'll then. So it's a continual process of fueling the fire of manufactured hate and fear, which they want to keep going indefinitely. That's the game plan. It's clear as day. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah. I think there's supposed to be a big march or something in D.C. next week or something about Gaza or Palestine. You know what they're going to say? Hamas supporters and anti-Semites gathered in Washington, D.C. to talk about how much they hate Jews. And they'll be like Orthodox Jews walking around with their, outfits on, people and all of the beards and all that stuff, yarmulkes. And no. All Jew haters and anti-Semites, thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands of them came together to talk about how much they, and it is like, you're the ones that told us that you were the good faith actors. Trump and his people came in and what they say, we're opposed to censorship. They're just telling you they don't want you on here for this or that. They're lying. They're really censoring you. We're good faith actors. We're going to talk to you honestly. We're going to stop this censorship. We're going to do all of that. All lies. It's just now, I'm telling you, there's at least as much, if not more, censorship now under Trump. It's more severe. They'll take bigger acts against you, But now they got mainly one thing. You know what I mean? That's it. It's coming for China. Sooner or later, at some point, if you don't say that China is evil, they're coming after you just like they did Russia. But now the only thing is you can actually say whatever you want about the Ukraine conflict. Right? That's off. But it's censorship on steroids regarding Zionism.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're at. It's unfortunate because that again, there's the people that voted for this thought they were voting for championing free speech, championing again, anti-censorship when we're just seeing a massive crackdown on it. And like you said, more aggressive, I guess, consequences, right? More than just, oh, what happened to us? We had our YouTube channel terminated. How about arresting people, deporting people, disappearing people, and then gloating about it? How about that? We gloated, but now we gloat about it. Trump was talking about he's going to be all the people that he's calling these domestic terrorists that are burning up Teslas. We're going to ship them to El Salvador. We don't need a due process. F them. Wait, what? Does that make any sense at all? And we're talking, I mean, we supported, championing the idea that if you were arrested wrongfully or, not given due process, if you happen to be a January 6th, we were like, that's wrong. We can disagree ideologically, but you can't just call someone a domestic terrorist, lock them up, and not give them the rights that that democracy demands to give people rights. That's something that we said that's wrong. How are you turning around and saying, let's just do this and let's gloat about it? Let's just lock people up and throw away the key. It's sounding like everything that is against what you ran on. And then going back to Trump's first term, that's how he started his first term. The campaign season kicked off when he said, Bush and Cheney, you guys started illegal wars. He looked Jeb Bush in the face and said, your family are a bunch of Iraqi murderers, and you started an illegal torture program. You did all these horrible things. We don't want to do that anymore. It sounds like Trump's now is looking to do things like that right now, and he's high-fiving about it. He's saying, yeah, let's take away people's rights and that'll teach them. We'll ship them to a place they'll never get any access to any sort of fair trial. Not in El Salvador. I'll tell you that. We've seen.
Oh yeah, they could be killed. Yeah, their lives in danger. Well, diseases improperly fed. Here's the thing, and it's your buddy. Look. I'm former law enforcement. If you go to a dealership and you light some cars on fire, there are laws that are on the books that you can be charged with. I would say to anybody, how the shit libs are. We're going to go show them. We're going to burn a Tesla dealership or whatever. Come on, they got insurance. They're going to get their money back, dude. Don't fool yourself, right? But here's the point. You could, in burning that, you could kill somebody. You could start a fire that spreads across the community and burns the whole community. That's dangerous stuff. Don't go around starting fires. You can injure people. You could kill somebody, right? Okay. What if there's a homeless camp behind there and homeless camp catches on fire and everybody gets killed? That's on you, right?
That's on you.
So if you go light some cars at a dealership on fire in any state, there are laws that you can and should be charged with. Whatever the law is, destruction of property, maybe arson, I don't know, whatever, right? Or maybe not arson, I don't know. In some states, it has to be occupied dwelling, home. But whatever the case may be, those laws are fine. You violated the laws, and there are laws on the books to address that.
Yeah.
But how is it terrorism? How do you reinterpret that? Why? Because your buddy works with you? Because your buddy is in the White House, this rich billionaire guy who's your buddy is in the White House. And I've heard some Trump people say this too. I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote for the billionaires to come in and make policy. I didn't vote for you know what I mean? The question I think, and I'm going to ask you this is, I'll throw this at you. The issue is that not just that they're saying it, but what do they do about it? Do they say, I didn't vote for that? And you know what? If there's a third party person or something like that, damn it, I'm going to vote for them. I'm not voting for these parties anymore. Do they get where I am, where I say, look, you're not going to get me again. You got me too many times. I'm not voting for you. Oh boy, Bernie and AOC are out there doing a Fight the Oligarchs tour. I guess I better come back to the Democrats. Oh, hell no.
Yeah. It's so one of the biggest shocks to the system was the day after the election when we looked at the statistics of the third party vote and the third party turnout. It was shockingly low, Garland. I would not have bet how low the Jill Stein turnout was. the Chase Oliver turnout was. It was depressingly low. And so to me, I don't know where we are. Where are we when on one hand, yes, people are tired of the party they supported forever and they said they're ready to walk. But where are they walking to? Right back to the other party. When are people going to understand that the right move, like the right side of history to be on this previous election, was either staying home or voting third party or writing someone in? That was it. Those are your three. There was no other choice. And if you still signed up for one of these sides and thought that something was happening special for you, you were wrong. You got tricked. You got played. And so will there be a new movement for let's get out of both of these parties? Will there be from the right? Maybe. I don't know. I don't see the right going back to the left, but something has to change here as far as how we look at the election cycle. And what are we saying? What message are we sending? The Democratic Party needed to be punished for what they did the previous 4 years. You punish them. You say, you don't get my vote. You did everything wrong. You did everything like humanly possible to go against what was right. And you lied to us 1,000 times. You took the democracy away from us. You took a primary away, all this stuff. You propped up a demented person and told us it was a stutter. The list is so long what you guys did. You started a genocide. You started an illegal proxy war, money laundering scheme in Ukraine. The list is long. So you punish them, but do you go over and just say, oh, this looks like a great option over here. This looks like a real people's movement. It's not. Like you said, Garland, it's a billionaire funded operation. So you leave one billionaire funded operation and go to the other. I hope people can wake up and start understanding that we have to get out of the two-party system altogether, period. That's it. It's a uniparty. It's not a two-party. It's a uniparty. And we're tired of it. And so, hopefully there's enough people on the right now seeing that the whole thing is captured.
Yeah. Matt Weinglass, he has a great his show is actually on Rumble. That's his foundation there, the Homeless Left. Tell everybody you actually have a account on YouTube also. I'm whispering, of course. No, but you have a burner account, shall we call it? Kind of like a burner phone on YouTube.
Yes, it's our burner account. We're just, we don't want to go down without a fight. So we started another one. It's called THL Presents on YouTube. So please find that one. And then the Homeless Left on Rumble. And we're on every Tuesday and Thursday. We have Craig Pasta coming back with us tomorrow. Fiorella Isabel Truthwire from Moscow. She'll be on with us too. So we're excited about that show tomorrow. But yeah, check us out, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. And of course, as always, don't forget, I certainly appreciate everybody. Let's look and see before we go. If we got a super chat or something, we got a question here, we'll answer that. I see one. Let's see what we got. Matt and I. If you stay, oh, well, look at there. We got a new member. That's always awesome. Anyone can be a member. We certainly appreciate that. Here we go. And if you want Matt and I to answer a question real quick, just throw it in there. Okay. Anas Bella Shihab, America, the UK, and Israel, like an unholy trinity. Three different aspects of the same thing. No one controls the other. The three are one. You know what's interesting? I had someone talk about the Ukraine conflict, the US and France and all, but the way they described it was division of labor. You know what I mean? Okay, you got MI6, you'll set up the government. We got lots of weapons here, we'll pump in the weapons. The French, they're familiar with the French Foreign Legion and mercenaries, so they'll handle pumping in the mercenaries. So what you had with NATO, but oftentimes where we look at this country versus that country versus this country, it's a division of labor amongst an allied group of countries who all have the same outcome, which is to steal somebody's stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, everybody plays their role. So it's like this, and everybody has their personality too, what they present publicly. So everybody kind of plays that role. But yeah, I think that and I mentioned this earlier, we were calling it like this axis of evil. We're not the allies anymore. We're the bad guys. And that's it. Everyone plays their part. US, Israel, the UK, and everyone else that we work with in order to present this picture of the good guys and policing the world. And yeah, just that we're saving democracy around the world. That's what we do.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting you say that because, like, oftentimes with the two parties, I feel the same way. Like everybody's playing their role.
Yep.
Like, okay, whether it's okay, I'm going to do this psyop where I pretend that I didn't know who was on this Signal app, right? This CIA MI6 compromised app. I'm going to pretend like I don't know who was on it. Okay, I'm the Republicans. I do that. Then the Democrats' job is to come and attack you. Yes, how dare you do this with this Signal app? So, like, I'm playing my role of setting up the fake screw up. You're playing your role. You're going to attack me for the fake screw up. But what we're all doing is keeping you from talking about the fact that the fake screw up was related to another attack or illegal attack on another country. So don't you think when it comes to playing the roles, I mean, you're called a conspiracy theorist if you make those kinds of statements.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely playing the roles. And don't forget the Bernie and AOC fight the oligarchy. They're playing their roles. Make us think that something's happening on the ground and we're going to fight that oligarchy. Guess what, Bernie and AOC? You're part of the oligarchy. Oopsie. They left
the worst
out
part. And I would argue the worst part. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The best part of the oligarchy is the part that you can see above the ground. The part that gets you is the part that's underground, hiding, waiting for you. So how does it go? They drag you back in. We would stand to fight the oligarchy. They bring people together, right? And they do this and they gather the crowds and they get the people. And then the midterms come up. Well, how are we going to fight the oligarchies, Bernie? Well, that's easy. We're going to vote for Democrats. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You know that all this consummates in the end. His game, he and AOC and more coming are sent out there to capture the anger and the fear and the stress. There's war, there's people losing their jobs. Capture all of that and bring it all together and bring it up to a crescendo like a musical piece. And just when it gets to hit its zenith, just when it gets at the top, what are we going to do? Well, elections are in 3 weeks. Now that you mention it, I think maybe I don't know. Maybe there is something can you think of anything, AOC? Maybe they could vote for the Democrats. I never thought of that. Good idea. I hadn't really thought about it, guys. But AOC mentioned something. Maybe you could vote for the Democrats in a couple weeks.
Yeah. And then we'll get on the phone with them and talk to them about Medicare for all and talk to them about $20 an hour wage. Maybe we can change their mind later, but vote for them now. And then, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out that stuff you guys want. We'll figure that out later. Don't worry about that stuff. Just vote blue no matter who. We're all good.
Yeah, they're still trying to drag Biden to the left. Remember that 2020? When people then said, well, it's his whole life, he's just been a right winger in the worst way and a warmonger and all that. And he said, blah, blah, blah. And he just worked for the banks and the credit cards. And they said, fair enough. Good arguments, but elect him. And we'll drag him to. They literally said drag. They used the metaphor drag, implying that he ain't going to want to do it, but we'll get our mitts in him and he won't be able to avoid it. And as soon as he got elected, they never said another word about dragging him to the left. They're like, shut up and get out of the way, you conspiracy theorists, before we have to throw you off social media. At any rate, go ahead.
That's the game. They do it so well. But hopefully enough people are realizing it now. What was the old line? Fool me once.
Yeah.
George W. did such a great job with fool me once. Shame on you. Or shame on me. Well, fool me twice. Can't get fooled again. Something like that.
And as what was it? Mitch McConnell used to say, "There's nothing to be learned from getting kicked by the same mule twice. From a second kick from the same mule." You know what? Why don't we take them for their words? There isn't. They've screwed us time and time. This will be about the 50th kick from the same mule. There's nothing to be learned from the 51st kick. Trust me, guys out there and who are planning on, who are setting the I've literally seen things that says the midterms can't get here fast enough. Really? Why? What's going to happen in the midterms? You're going to get out on the street with your pink hats? Matt Weinglass, thanks a lot, everybody. Follow him at The Homeless Left. THL Presents, right?
THL Presents on YouTube. The Homeless Left on Rumble.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, follow me on Rockfin. Follow me on Telegram. Follow me on Rumble. All of that stuff's going across the bottom of the page. Of course, if you can afford it, Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee, PayPal, one of those, if you can afford to contribute to the channel. Thank you very much. If you can't, no big deal. You can subscribe. You can become a member. It's $3 or $4 to become a member, but you can subscribe. You can share this on all your social media platforms. That's the most important thing you can do. These are great conversations. I really enjoy them. Thanks a lot, Matt. And make sure you catch all of Matt's good work. He's out here doing really, really good stuff. Thanks a lot. We're out.